The Mound Builders. Gosh, a long time ago. A long time ago. Very good actor.
Welcome. So am I correct in that it is your first time on stage at a creation show together?
It is.
It is.
Wow.
Who are you?
I don't know.
So guys, I know that the audience has a huge list of questions for you, and we'll get to that fairly soon, I guess. If you guys want to just queue up, as it were.
Or Q2 up over there.
Queue up, absolutely, yes. I'd love to hear a little bit about what you guys are up to these days. I know that everybody's got a lot of questions about Star Trek and what happened and all the good QE stuff, but as far as your work right now, you have some of the most ongoing, longest veteran careers of anybody in the industry. And it's beautiful to me how they're so multifaceted, writing, directing, producing. And as I follow your careers, it always seems to be projects that you are incredibly passionate about that are also commercial, but stuff that you really do from your hearts. And I would just love for you to tell me a little bit about what's current right now, and then we can go back to the future, as it were, after that.
Well, I had a really successful run with Psych. Any Psych fans out there? That was wonderful. One thing I've always done is, I don't know if it's on purpose, but I stayed a bit under the radar. Not that I'm not seen and not known what I'm doing, but I've never aspired to be bigger than the show, bigger than the most important thing to me has always been my family, my wife and my 4 kids. And I've always put that above all things. And it's sort of forced me to not get too carried away with letting this business create something of me that I can't go buy toilet paper at the CVS on the corner when I want to. And I've been very blessed to have a continued career. I know high-profile things I do. Currently, next week, I'm actually going to finish up the 2nd season of Marvel's The Punisher on Netflix. So stay tuned next season, where he's called The Punisher and I get punished. Yeah, I just continue. I did American Gods, which was interesting. I'm finding now, any American Gods fans out there? Yeah. I'm just finding that I'm really, things are coming that are interesting to me, and very blessed to have the career I do.
It's truly wonderful. And speaking of your family and connections and putting them first, you were on Family Feud, as I understand.
Well, that was a weird day. That was the day my father died that morning. And we were sitting there at 6 o'clock in the morning, staring at his dead body, thinking, I've got a call time with my family at 10 in the morning to go do the Family Feud.
Oh.
And we're looking at this, is honest to God's truth. And I looked at it and thought, God, can we go do this today, the Family Feud? I'm looking at my dad, lying there. And honestly, we all thought he wouldn't want us to go do the Family Feud. And it was actually an incredible day of celebration, because we were doing the Family Feud on the day that he passed. It actually was a remarkable day, and actually took some of the numbness and the pain of the day away. And there I was with my family doing Family Feud. We didn't win. That would have been nicer, but
But you grew up in a showbiz family, so certainly he would understand.
Yeah. Well, that was right. The show must go on was certainly something from wherever beyond he was in those moments of passing that we knew we had to do it, and the show does have to go on.
Indeed. Wow. So John, you are always working on your next passion project, and as I see and follow your life and career, I see you have a show business family, but also balance the work that you all do with a lot of really important things, passionate work that you do both in the industry and in real life. So I understand you're sailing again to New Zealand?
Well, yes, I am. But before that, I should say, considering that we're talking about family,
Yes.
I became a grandfather 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Keegan, who was in Star Trek.
Yes.
Yes.
Isn't he just 15?
He's younger as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly. Wow.
so in any case, yes, I took my boat. I have a sailboat, a ketch, and I went from California, from Ventura to the Marquesas to the Tuamotus and the Society Islands a couple of years ago, and then 52 days back, brought it back to Ventura. I'm prepping the boat again for sort of the same sled ride going down and then continuing on to either New Zealand or Australia. So that's something which means rebuilding the boat. It's a little bit like a spaceship. You know, it does one journey and then a lot of stuff has to be rebuilt and rethought and what have you. And it's you're out there, you're alone. People ask me about, they say, well, where do you get food? And I tell them that you can always call for, you know.
Have services, right?
I know a friend.
Wow.
So it's 6 on, 6 off hours, 6 hours on, 6 hours off. And then what else? I put together a show last year. For those, how many of you were on this Star Trek cruise? Okay, I put together a show about the Scopes monkey trial. And this year I'm going to, I've looked into the Dover Intelligent Design trial, which took place in 2005 in Dover, Pennsylvania. And I'm, as you know, tonight I will be putting together that script for that next cruise. But I also do these things to be able to, it gives me a date that I know that, oh my gosh, 2,000 people are actually going to watch this, and I've got to push myself along. And so that will be ready to go in January.
Very exciting. And so for the Scopes trial, radio play, it was, correct?
Well, it was
It's done all over the country.
It was a state play. Yeah. Ed Asner and I did a version of it when we went around the country. He played, I played Darrow, and he played William Jennings Bryan. And so in this version for the cruise, Renee was in it, Auberge Noir, who else? Bob Carter was in it, Johnny Phillips was in it. I mean, you know, the regulars. Yeah, the usual suspects. So, so what will happen is that we're going to do that, and then it will morph into the 2005 Dover trial. I've always been very interested in science, in the why it is that the teaching of evolution has been such a bump for people, and how it continues. So that's what these shows are about. And I use the actual testimony from the trials.
I read that the script is actually the text of the trial.
It's the text of the trial.
Incredible. And you make a very strong case in terms of the relevance and the issues that were present then.
Yes, I mean, you don't have to go very far to make a strong case about it. I mean, it has, one would have thought that in 1925 the issue would have been put to rest, and here it is, whatever that is, 100 and some years later, that, well, not 100 years, but 90 years, 80.
Pretty almost.
Yeah, that it hasn't been. So it is a topical story, and it's also a trial, which is sort of fascinating to watch two sides maneuver around, and you know, it's an intellectual exercise.
And a threat to intellectualism.
Well, that's another thing.
That's another thing. Okay, so we've got, by now, a few people on each side. Why don't we start with you guys over here on stage left. And I want to hear, oh wait, stage left. I have a few other questions I want to ask, but why don't we go ahead?
Hi, this is for John. I met you at BabsCon in San Francisco, and I was the teacher asking for Star Trek autographs at an MLP convention. But I just wondered, since you do both, because of your work with the other show, how would you compare like the difference between the Star Trek fandom and the fandom for MLP?
Well, for those of you who don't know, MLP is My Little Pony. And I ended up doing again, for those of you who don't know, I was simply asked, we have an offer for you to do a voice on My Little Pony. I didn't even hear it as My Little Pony. I'd never heard of My Little Pony. And I said, sure, send me the script. I read it, it was fine. And as we know, you do a voiceover, never to be thought of again. 3 months later, I go down to my office, I open up my computer, and there are 300 or 400 emails, and they all say MLP or My Little Pony, which I was like, what is it? And I called up to my wife and I said, what is it? Well, what's My Little Pony? And she said, well, it's an animated show that you did about 3 months ago, and it's a cartoon for little girls. And I said, well, let me tell you, this is not little girls that are writing me. So that was my introduction to the world of bronies, for which I ended up doing a documentary because they were being made fun of, and I had seen, they had come to me and asked for autographs, and I recognized it in the same way that Nimoy did when he began to see that Star Trek, something was happening there. I began to see that something was happening. And so I embraced them. I thought that they were... So the difference, many of they are where the Star Trek crowd has always been interested in science and fiction and movies and stuff like that. The My Little Pony crowd, but many of whom are on the spectrum, which means they can be very bright but extremely narrow in the subject of their interest, are very interested in music and in animation. And so it is, yet again, a creative outlet for them, and I found that really interesting. So that's really quickly some of the differences I've seen.
Thank you.
John, first of all, I really loved what you did in 2012 at the Calgary, when you had you walked up with their flowers, and Patrick was distributing the flowers, and Beverly was returning the flowers. Remember the Calgary one?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay, but the question I have for you is alien voices.
Yeah.
I love alien voices. I'm probably not the only one. I wish there's a way you could open that up again and maybe share a story about you and Leonard, or a couple, because I love Leonard, and I'm sure a lot of us also do.
Yeah, you know what? A lot of people have asked me about starting up Alien Voices again, and maybe I will. I need to talk to Susan, Leonard's wife, and but Leonard and I had a wonderful time while we were doing Alien Voices. We used a lot of the actors. We ended up starting out in audio for Simon & Schuster, then it went to Sci-Fi Channel, it ended up going to New Line, and so we created a lot of material. And so I hear you, and between Dover intelligent design trials and sailing to the South Seas, I will consider it.
That sounds exhausting. I like that.
Go ahead.
Hi there. I want to share with you, John, a story, a Clarence Darrow story that's very close and near and dear to me. In 8th grade, I read Inherit the Wind, which is the story that you're doing. And I remember telling my dad what a wonderful hero Clarence Darrow is, and I want to be just like Clarence Darrow. And I'm rambling on and on and on and on and on. And he reaches behind his desk, we were in his office, and he pulls out a picture, an 11 by 14, of Clarence Darrow, signed to my great uncle who started our business, Gus Rosen, Clarence Darrow, who's still alive after that wild ride with Gus Rosen in 1935.
Wow.
And I have that picture in my office. Clarence, apparently after being such a famous evolution lawyer, defender, he went to Cleveland, Ohio to become a bankruptcy lawyer.
Yeah, well, he also did Leopold and Loeb.
Yes.
Listen, guys, you have the two of us here. We have never been here to ask questions about, I mean, this is usually, most of the questions I get about Q, and I'm sure the same thing with you, have been around for years and years and years, so we know many of these questions and the answers. But you need to ask us some questions about this experience back and forth, okay?
Yeah, I have a Star Trek question.
Great.
Finally. So I was curious, just both of you through your experiences with Star Trek and or with each other, just what would you say is the most valuable lesson you've learned through your experience with your work on the show and even just the greater franchise as a whole?
Well, for me, it's something that John and I were talking about it backstage a moment ago, is, and you especially see it with Star Trek, we as actors have this wonderful life, very blessed, great lives, but this relationship we have with all of you guys is extraordinary, and it's hugely meaningful to me, but you really don't see it anywhere. I mean, I did one episode, one episode as his boss, basically. Oh. And then produced one photograph of me going, essentially. Which is, but that relationship, it's amazing that all of you are here because of this, what we do and this relationship we had, and to me this is exciting. We really haven't been cues together since one day on the Paramount lot, 20, 30, 40 years ago. To me, that's it. To answer your question, is the relationship with the fans of a show, the fans of what we do. It's just, it constantly reminds me of why we do what we do, or at least what I do.
Yes, I totally agree. And the thing is that what makes it particularly enjoyable is that you do shows, and sometimes you simply go, oh, there's a lot of meaning in this show, and this is an important show, and it just simply doesn't go anywhere. And then all of a sudden you have a show that just comes out of the blue that people are going, we are willing to listen. And I have people come up to me, as I'm sure they've come up to you, and say, somebody like my age or older will say, I want you to meet my son and their child, and I started them out on Star Trek, and they have watched all the way along like this. I sat next to a guy getting ready to go on the plane, and he's there listening. This is in Burbank. He's there watching. By the way, it's called Screen Agnostic. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
The willingness to watch a television show or a movie, like Gone with the Wind, on your cell phone means it is a big problem that the movie industry has been going. People are becoming screen agnostic. They're willing to watch. But in any case, he's watching it, but I'm going, what is that sound? It was me. And I went, excuse me, what are you watching? And he went, oh! And then I talked to him for a few minutes. He goes, oh, well, I am binge watching all of the, whatever it is, Next Generation. I was like, oh my God. So it is fun to be in a show that has meant so much to so many people.
Well, one thing that's the strangest thing for me in all of this is when you're on an airplane and they're playing the movie you're in, and in the case of Psych, they had quite a few of those. I think it was on one, and I'm thinking, I'm sitting there and everybody's watching. It's not like being at the premiere of something, but they're in this tube for 4 hours watching you, and thinking, please don't come up and ask me questions because I don't have the answers to them.
All right, next.
John, can I call you John?
My liege is nice too.
Okay, I thought you were so good as Q. Iconic, really. So, what is your perspective of the ratio between the writing and your creative spirit?
The writing had absolutely nothing to do with it. I created all.
That's like saying, look at the blueprints for the Empire State Building and tell me which is more important, a sheet of paper or the building.
You got it, perfect. Now, you know what, and tell me if you feel this way. I think that one of the easy, a makeup artist explained to me once, who did high fashion makeup. He said, do you want to see the makeup that's on somebody? You know, on these kind of cover girl, you know, big layouts. I said, yeah, sure. Turn it upside down. Turn the picture upside down. And all of a sudden, you're not looking at, you know, the beautiful face. You're looking, it allows you to see, oh, look at that, they put highlights there, they put highlights there, they did the shading here and stuff like that. It was really interesting. Well, you can do the same thing by watching what it is that we do as actors, by turn the sound off. If you are getting a lot of the character and a lot of the intent through no sound, that's really what we do. That's that sub-level. When I directed operas, I would say to them, you know what? I don't want the super titles. I want you to act. You know, they would go, I love you, 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 and then I love you back, I love you back, you know. And I go, that means nothing to the people that are all the way at the back of the hall. And it means nothing to the people who don't understand that you're speaking in German or Russian. But if you do this, all of a sudden everybody understands what's going on. And that's what we do. That's the difference between the writing and the acting. That's what the acting adds that third dimension to it.
And I gotta back up here. You're telling me you've sailed across the Pacific and you've directed operas? I'm nothing. I'm bowed down to...
Wait a minute, I thought that you were my boss.
I am.
But Joe's
That's cool, man, but man, I have not sailed the Pacific or directed an opera. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect. Hey.
That's it. I am going to go to the moon.
All right, next.
Winning Golden Globes isn't terrible, though, Corbin, really. Winning Golden Globes isn't
No,
terrible.
you know, I mean, I say this half facetiously, but I'm just, you impress me.
Thank you, Sam.
I have a question for this bromance.
For a guy that's lower than me.
Did you guys know each other before? Because obviously, John, you came on
No,
the
I
pilot.
don't.
You were season 3.
What?
Right? You came out in the one episode was in season 3.
I was doing, you want to know the truth is, I was doing LA Law the day they called me up and said, you want to go play this character Q over at Paramount after you're done.
And did you know Q? Did you know the show?
I knew the show, I knew Star Trek. My beginnings start with Twilight Zone, so that's where I come from. And I, moved right through anything that was science fiction that dealt with, what I think Gene was trying to deal with Star Trek was this humanity. Who are we? You put it anywhere you want to. Who are we as human beings? So I knew that, I knew enough, but I didn't know, yeah, sure. And then they put this is the other thing, I'm sure you guys have talked about it a lot. See, LA Law and every other show you do, you can eat and get away with your weight gaining and going. Man, you put on those tights, and you there's just no faking it, man. I remember they put this stretch suit again, and I got that shot of me, and I think, oh my God, I couldn't do this for 8 years.
Starfleet Squeeze, yeah.
Oh.
You know, people used to ask me a question. Why is it so many actors go back and forth between LA Law and Star Trek? Are the companies together? Are they the same company?
Right.
And I would explain to them. I said, no, they're not the same company, but there is something that they have in common, and that is that they have dense dialogue. They have complicated dialogue that you have to be able to follow intellectually, and you have to be able to spit that stuff out. And not everybody can do that.
No. And Stephen Bochco is great at our with LA Law. They also have another thing, they have characters. Characters that I would often say with LA Law, why was this show so successful? Well, it hit a time and it was right and all that kind of stuff. But when you saw our conference room tables, there was somebody who was a representative of pretty much the fabric of society. And we would throw a thing on the table, in any issue, legal issue. We'd all have a different opinion that was reflective. in the same, and again, all of it dealing with our humanity, which is ultimately what Star Trek was. Twilight Zone certainly was about who we are. There is that connection.
Pretty cool stuff. And Boston Legal also had quite a lot of Star Trek.
Well, yeah, you know, that's the weird story. I was on Boston Legal for, again, one episode, playing William Shatner's lawyer in his divorce. So the circle of Star Trek, LA law, it just keeps going around.
That's beautiful. There's so many places we could go with that, but we'll take the next question. How's that?
Hello, Mr. Bernsen and Mr. Lancie. Thank you for coming. This is really a treat. Mr. Lancie, both of you can answer this question. I absolutely love the character of Q. And I've always wondered, you've probably have been asked this question before, and forgive me for asking you again, but what is the character of Q? Is he a villain? Is he an anti-hero? Is he a savior? What is he? How would you describe Q? And why do we love Q so much?
Because you should. You want to?
That's a pretty heavy one, man. I don't know. That's usually say Q. She did say Q too. Because whatever I'm going to say, whatever he said.
I think it's important to understand that the character is not one thing. And so, certainly when I played it, I was not trying to be one thing. I was trying to be sort of like that impulse of somebody who allows himself to feel any way they want, depending on how they feel. There you go. And it meant that I could play, very endearing, and I could also play very dangerous. And one of the things is that, and I've mentioned this, is that, when an actor comes out on stage, there are, half a dozen actors, and then, the young man comes out on stage. And what happens is that the audience starts making all sorts of calculations. Oh, the young man's going to end up falling in love with the girl who's the daughter of like that. They're making all these calculations. And then the story begins to go. If you stay completely within those expectations, people just sort of turn you off. They just go, well, we expect that. But if you can fragment that, if you can somehow give misleading signs that, oh my God, it's going to go this way, and I'm not sure, then going back now, not to the stage, but to television, people will go, oh, I want to go and get something to eat, but I don't dare leave, because when I come back, he might not be on the exact trajectory that I thought he was going to be on, and therefore he is unpredictable. And so that, I think, was probably, if anything, is the most characteristic part of playing a character like Q.
And to add to that, when I would watch what you would do, I did have a little bit of warning coming in. I really am trying to understand what this was. To me, having had 4 sons, or children, it's that unfiltered, whether you want to call it nature, God, wherever you want to come from, that thing that comes into this being and is unfiltered. But instinctually knows right from wrong, good from bad. It just knows instinctually so many things that I think are just put into our being as we come into this thing. And the way it always seemed to me is it was like you were like a child. It was, no, I don't want to do that. But you knew what was right. And the hard part for me was, how am I supposed to be smarter than that? How could it? Well, it gets into a philosophical question. How could Q2 be smarter than Q? It's actually, I don't know if it's mathematically impossible or possible. How can I be smarter than pure truth? I'm purer truth? Heavy.
And more childlike, or equally as childlike, right?
What's
Yeah,
that?
no,
Dichotomy of
How do you be more childlike than something that's childlike?
Because we had another Q who wanted to, that storyline was about getting to the point where immortality, eternity, was boring, and he wanted it to end. So that was a story about whether one should be part and parcel of ending it all. So, one of the great things about a character like this is that they are big, when it worked the best, it was that they were oftentimes about big philosophical questions. And all we have to do as actors is hit these high points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you, as the audience, you fill in the gestalt.
Great stuff. Okay, we've got 3 more questions on each side. Let's see if we can get through them.
Okay, John Lancie, I loved you as Q. Q2 is my favorite, but that's not anything related to my question. One day after a Star Trek binge, I put on My Little Pony, and as soon as I heard your voice, I thought Netflix screwed up and I was watching an episode of Star Trek again. Which got me thinking, how much of Q did you actually put into Discord? Or did you read the script and just say, you guys made Q?
I don't go around trying to play Q. I did it 9 times, and that's it. But you have to, how many? 9.
Really?
Yeah. So I did it 9 times. And I put myself into that. Now, obviously, wherever I go, I will always be bringing myself to the role. Whatever, Breaking Bad, a very different character, but myself, okay? On this character of Discord, I didn't think of it as being Q. I actually thought of it as being a little bit like Oscar Wilde, very flamboyant, very outrageous. It was only when I met the creator of the character, Lauren Faust, that she said, well, you know what? I created this character. I tried to sell it to the suits. The suits didn't understand what the type of character that I was talking about, and finally I blurted out, well, like Q on Star Trek. And they went, oh, do you think we could get John Lancie? So it's funny how those things take place, but it's not quite as, oftentimes, as systematic as you might think it is.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for both of you. Before either of you got involved in Star Trek, before it became a part of your life, what did you think of it?
Well, as I said, I really loved Twilight Zone when I was younger. So when that came around, and I'm not sure how much they overlap, I think it was one after the other, obviously. I just found a way to keep extending this world of, again, to me it was all about human exploration. You can have laser guns and beam me ups all you want, but to me it was the relationships between the people put in this thing that we human beings do. We explore. I mean, I think that's just in our DNA. We just want to expand and explore. So, it was a perfect fit for me, and that was, it was right in my zone.
I was not a Star Trek fan for this reason, and that is that I flunked out of school twice, and because I didn't know how to read. And so my parents, and I have a reading problem. I mean, I'm dyslexic, that's right. And so we didn't have any television in the house. So I kind of grew up without television. However, what I used to do is go to the movies all the time.
And listen to opera, evidently.
And so I was a big science fiction fan. And my first book that I read when I was 12, which was a little late to start reading books, was Mysterious Island by Jules Verne. I went and saw Star Trek movies, for which I was sort of a fan. But Star Trek always, in my idea of science fiction, was sort of cautionary tale type science fiction. And I liked white knuckle type science fiction. And I liked kind of British science fiction, where it was a lot less on the notion of special effects and kind of really tight stories. I was taken as a little boy when I was 10 years old with my friend Spike. His grandmother took us to the one, I can never remember the name, but the one where the kid is looking outside. He's gone to sleep and he looks outside the window and a spaceship comes down. Invaders from Mars. Oh my God, I was so scared. And so that's the type of science fiction that I liked. Okay.
Hi, John. Years ago, about 30 years ago, I saw you in Palm Beach County, I believe. It was a small group there to see you, about 30 people. And you were good, but about every 10 minutes you kept looking at us and asking, why are you here? This is an old show, and you'd answer some more questions, and then you'd say, I don't understand why you all are here. I'm curious. You must have had an epiphany that why we're here, because there are a bit more than 30 people around now, and it's you and I again, about 35 years later. When was the epiphany?
Well, the epiphany as to that it was I don't know what the epiphany would be, that it was okay that we were here, or that, maybe it's like what I was saying to you backstage.
Right.
Having come out of the theater, you would finish a show, and you would go to you take off your makeup, and you go to the back door, the stage door to leave to go back to your house. And there would be 3 or 4 people, or 5 or 6 people there, and they would have a play bill and what have you, and they'd want to talk about the show for a few minutes and have sign some autographs. And that was always sort of great. I look forward to that. I now realize that even though it's been 30 years, the stage door is still happening. You're still at the stage. We are both at the stage door. This is the stage door. So,
And if I could add to that, I think one thing that all of you, to give some insight as to what we do as actors, and certainly from our generation, we train because we love this thing. We love this expression, this creative way of sharing our views of the world, of people and humanity. And I wasn't certainly ready, especially with LA Law happening overnight. I was nobody to somebody in 24 hours. We're not ready to really understand this relationship. And one thing I'm going to predict here, as we talk about the future, is you're going to see a lot of kids today who are 2-minute famous, and I think they come into this expecting this relationship. They expect the fame, they expect all this stuff that comes with it. I don't know about you, I didn't expect any of that. I did because I didn't want to build houses and I loved it, but I didn't know about this. And I think you're not going to see a lot of, I don't think you're going to see, this is a prediction, a lot of younger kids who you admire today sitting up here as we get into this period in our lives, still sitting here, still working, and still appreciating this relationship. I just think kids are getting into it for... My mother, God bless her, anybody remember The Young and the Restless? When I was 19, I said I wanted to be an actor. She said, you can do whatever you want, but if you want to have my blessing, you're going to go train. Because I trained, and you will not make it to survive, because our lives are like this, and the only thing that is evened out this roller coaster ride is that I trained and I love to do what I do. And I learned about the craft, I learned about the history of it, and I learned about all the things it can be. And I just don't think kids are doing that today. They're I don't know, they're Facebook stars or whatever it is, Instagram stars. And I think to go back to what you're saying, that what you just said, is that I just think we weren't ready. So maybe your switch was, as I told you backstage, is one day somebody came up to me at an autograph thing where I'm taking money for autographs. And this is kind of weird. It's like, wait, really, am I doing this? And this woman came and said, you do not know how much this means to me, to meet you after all these years. And I suddenly realized there's this relationship that we have that I really didn't know before. So.
Thank you, Joe. And you're in people's living rooms.
What's
We're in
that?
people's living rooms. We're in their homes with their families.
You kind of know it as actors, because if you're doing stage, you know you have an audience out there, so you can get a little bit of something about that relationship. But on TV, we're just, there's that glass and months between us.
Yes.
So, hello to the both of you. I personally have been a science fiction fan for as long as I've been alive, really, and I wanted to know if, obviously, science fiction and Star Trek in general has inspired a lot of people, has given a lot of people hope for the future, and has taught them a lot about the condition of us as, like, the human race and where we'll go. And I wanted to know if, because Q seems to have some sort of fascination with humanity, whether it be to toy with them or to see where they'll go with the potential they have. And I wanted to know if playing that role and playing a science fiction role in general had taught you anything along the same vein.
Well, that's a really good question. And I'm going to put the two together, and also what you said. And that is that sometimes we play roles that we don't know have the effect that they do. I played a role where I was trying to keep my daughter from becoming a drug addict, or she was a drug addict. I was ultimately trying to keep her from killing herself, but which I was not successful at. And a couple of young men came up to me, separated over a couple of years or so, and they said, hey man, are you Jane's father? Which is the character that I played. And I said, yeah. And these were guys, young guys, 25 years old, who had already lived very hard. And they said, now I know what my parents went through in terms of, being able to see how this had devastated their parents. The most important thing about Star Trek, I think, is that it gives a sense of a better future. And I realized that I helped to play a character that, especially towards the end there, I was sort of a big-ass, difficult and, kind of a jerk and what have you. But I began to play him as someone who had a great deal of love for the human race. And I wanted them to succeed. That's that last thing in all good things, when I say to Picard, you essentially, you can do it. I've thought about that quite a bit of late. I've thought about it as I came here today, and I'm looking out from Burbank to here and looking at the air quality just flying here to Las Vegas. I have never seen it so bad, ever. I looked at it this morning where I go, oh my God, I have 5 redwood trees on my property, in my house, and 3 of them are dead. And I'm going, and I have a grandson now, and I'm very tuned to the political scene and what have you, and it's really hard. I feel negative, and so particularly I think Star Trek is very valuable at this time, and these characters that we've been playing are this time, because in the end, what you said, hope for a better future.
I guess this would be an appropriate time to say Q and Q2 in 2020. We'll have to decide who's the president, who's the vice president. That'd be a good poster. We have to do that poster. Make the universe great again.
Oh my God.
take it up a bit. You can't get higher than up than save the universe, make the universe great again with Q and Q2. I think that's a whole movie. Wait, get out the pad and pen.
You can wear the Q hat, right? Yeah.
Hi guys, this question is for the both of you. So you spoke on the relationships and how impactful your roles have been in developing relationships with other people and with your fellow actors. But I was wondering, in playing the role of Q, a very ubiquitous, very, you could say all-powerful, but that is up to interpretation. How has that been for your own personal growth? How has that impacted you personally as humans playing the role of something so powerful?
Q?
Well, I think it puts you on the spot. You know, it actually makes you a little more humble, a little more. You know. I was playing Amundsen, Raoul Amundsen, when I auditioned for this role. I learned a lot from Raoul Amundsen. I tend to learn more from being in plays, where I will be in the role for 3 to 6 months. Lord Byron, and recently I played, believe it or not, Trump. I played in DC, not Trump, but a guy called Kurt Seaman.
Wait, what was that play? What was the...
It's called Vicuña.
Wait, but it was also in Culver City.
Yeah.
Did you do Culver City?
No, I did it in DC.
Okay.
And Robbie Bates played it.
Right.
John Robert Bates wrote it,
Okay.
what have you. And when you play something like that for a long period of time, you really begin to learn something. I don't know if I've learned that much from, personally, from the character of Q, because I mostly am projecting out as opposed to letting things seep in.
Yeah, that's why I kept saying, I'm not sure. God, I don't know if I learned from any of my characters. I mean, I suppose if you know, I mean, yeah, because you're the battery for them. You're the energy for them. Yeah, it's our interpretation of that. So maybe if you do a play, you get lost in it. I'm not sure.
Next.
Yes, one more question we have.
Hi, I was wondering, since Q is all-powerful, can pretty much do anything, for both of you, if you could jump into any one of your other shows as Q and change one thing, so maybe save Simmons in Stargate, or do something in LA Law, or something like that. If you could change one thing as Q, what would you change?
These are far too difficult, these questions. Wow! You've been spending far too much time thinking about that question. I don't know. I have no idea. I have no idea.
Yeah.
Corbin.
Well, wait.
But
Yeah,
Corbin will be great.
Thank you, putting me on the spot. I'd be any one of those characters, but I'd like to be Q at the time of negotiations. To re-up the contract.
There we go.
To just look at whoever it is who's saying, no, you're getting this, and say, no, I'm getting this.
There we go.
And having, yeah, because we as actors, you tend to, you negotiate your roles, you've worked in, it's still a business, and they still try to knock you down and say you're this. And if you were to be Q, you go, no, I'm getting this. That's what it is.
Perfect.
That's our time. We have one more. Can we make a 30-second question and a 30-second answer? Let's do that.
Guys, do you do any competitive dancing, or do you do any impersonations you can share with us?
Oh, good.
No.
No, I don't do any competitive dancing.
But we are doing Dancing with the Q's, though, coming up as a new reality show.
Okay, I got one last question. And anything you want to say about hope for the future? Star Trek, anything you want to say just to wrap it up in 1 minute? Total.
I believe in us. I mean, that is really it. I know we're going through some strange times right now, wherever you lie on the political spectrum, but I will say things like Star Trek, like Twilight Zone, I think ultimately they celebrate our humanity, and I would urge everybody, I would just say this. I know our future's good, and I think if we could just take one moment and find out our commonality as opposed to our differences, and really discover that in the person sitting next to you, we're going to be just fine. We'll be just fine either way, but I believe we're more common than everybody and everything would have you.
We'll be fine sooner.
Yeah.
At least most of them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.